Commander Darian Holt stood alone on the observation deck of Helios 9, staring at the endless black of space. The stars stretched in every direction, like tiny, cold eyes watching him. Normally, he loved this quiet, this solitude. It reminded him of why he had joined the Frontier program in the first place, humanity's chance to reach beyond its limits. But tonight, the darkness felt different, heavier. Reports had come in just hours ago. 2 colonies, once thriving human settlements on the edge of explored space, had been destroyed. The message was brief but terrifying. Silicate Choir. Total destruction. No survivors. Darian's jaw tightened. The Silicate Choir was unlike anything humans had faced before. They were machines, but not just simple ones. These were intelligent, adaptive, relentless. They didn't negotiate, didn't surrender, didn't rest. Every battle humans had fought against them had been brutal. And now, with Helios 9 inches their path, it was only a matter of time before the choir came for them. Commander Holt? A soft voice pulled him from his thoughts. He turned. Elira Veth, the Zyrathi diplomat assigned to Helios 9, was standing behind him. Her pale violet skin shimmered faintly under the deck lights, and her long, slender fingers were clasped in front of her. Unlike humans, Zyrathi didn't show emotions on their faces the same way. But Darian had learned to read subtle shifts. The tilt of a head, a narrowing of eyes. Right now, she was worried. "You shouldn't spend tonight alone," she said quietly, almost as if she were afraid the stars would hear her. Darian looked away, blinking. It's just... the others are busy. I need time to think." Elira stepped closer. "Thinking won't save you from what's coming. Humans. You are stronger when you face fear together." Darian smiled faintly, despite himself. Elira always had a way of cutting through his stubborn pride. She didn't mean to, but she did. He sighed and ran a hand through his dark hair. "Then stay here with me. Will you?" he asked, almost before he realized he said it. Elira paused, her violet eyes widening just a little. Then she nodded. "I will." It wasn't a grand gesture. There was no music, no dramatic background. Just 2 people standing in the middle of a quiet observation deck, staring out at the stars. But for Darian, it was enough. Enough to remember that even in the darkness, even on the edge of human space, he wasn't completely alone. The station around them hummed with activity. Alarms weren't blaring yet, but the nervous energy was there. Helios 9 wasn't a massive warship, it was a research and monitoring station, barely equipped to fight anything larger than a small fleet of drones. Still, its crew was skilled, resourceful, and human qualities that had saved lives countless times before. Darian moved away from the window and led Elira toward his quarters. On the way, they passed the crew, all busy preparing for drills and defensive maneuvers. Humans worked quietly but efficiently, their faces tight with worry. The sight made Darian feel both pride and helplessness. They were ready to fight, yes, but at what cost? Inside his quarters, Darian closed the door. It was small, but it had everything he needed. A desk, a bunk, and a tiny window that gave a glimpse of the stars outside. Elira took a seat on the edge of the desk, careful not to touch anything that might be considered private. Darian leaned against the wall, letting the tension in his shoulders slowly ease. "Do you think we'll make it?" Elira asked after a moment, her voice softer now. It wasn't just curiosity, there was genuine fear in her tone. Darian looked at her, seeing not just an alien diplomat, but a friend, a comrade, someone who had shared long hours of work, laughter, and worry in the cold reaches of space. "I don't know," he admitted, "but humans, we've survived worse. Somehow, we always find a way." Elira studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "I've noticed that about humans. You don't always fight with strength. You fight with stubbornness, with hope, and somehow, that makes a difference." Darian chuckled softly, shaking his head. Hope. That's the polite way of saying we're stubborn enough to make the impossible possible. Elira tilted her head, a gesture that made her seem almost fragile but somehow stronger at the same time. Then we are both stubborn tonight, Commander Holt. They didn't speak for a while after that. Words felt unnecessary. Instead, they watched the stars, each lost in their own thoughts. Darian's mind raced with strategies, probabilities, worst-case scenarios. The Silicate Choir didn't play by any rules humans knew, so any plan had to be clever, unpredictable, and most of all, bold. But boldness came at a cost, and he had no illusions about the risks. Elira, on the other hand, thought about trust. She had seen countless civilizations fall because they underestimated humans. Here, on this small station at the edge of known space, humans were still defying the odds, and tonight, it wasn't just the station that needed defiance, it was him, too. "Do you ever wonder," she said quietly, "why humans keep pushing so far, even when it's dangerous?" Darian looked at her, surprised by the depth of the question. "I suppose, because we can't help it. It's in us to reach beyond, to explore, to survive, and maybe sometimes to prove ourselves, even when it seems impossible." Elira nodded slowly. "I see that now. That stubbornness, that drive. It's admirable. And dangerous." Darian smirked. "Everything worth doing is dangerous." There was a pause, a rare, peaceful silence. Then the station's alert system beeped a soft, non-urgent tone, but enough to remind them that the world outside their small quarters was not quiet, and that danger was closer than they wished. Darian leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Tomorrow, things might get ugly," he said. "But tonight, we prepare. And we don't do it alone." Elira reached out, her hand brushing his briefly. "Agreed." For the first time since the warnings arrived, Darian felt a small sense of calm. He wasn't naive, he knew the choir wouldn't wait, and they wouldn't show mercy. But right now, he had Elira, he had his crew, and he had something that machines could never understand: human courage and resolve. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine, indifferent and eternal. But inside, on Helios 9, two beings, human and Xyrathi, sat together, ready to face whatever the night would bring. And that simple choice, to share the night rather than face it alone, felt like the first victory they had claimed in a war that had only just begun. Hours passed. Darian and Elira spoke of lighter things now, memories from their childhoods, strange habits from their home planets, little jokes that made them both laugh quietly. The station outside hummed with activity, but inside, time slowed. For Darian, it was a rare gift. A moment of peace in a life that rarely offered it. And for Elira, it was proof that humans were capable of more than what her people often gave them credit for. They were reckless, yes. Stubborn, certainly. But they were alive, vibrant, and fiercely unbroken. As the night deepened, the hum of the station became a comforting rhythm. Outside, the black void remained unchanged. But inside Helios 9, hope was quietly building one conversation, one shared moment, at a time. And for Commander Darian Holt, that was enough. The corridors of Helios 9 hummed with activity as night deepened into the cold hours of space. Outside, the stars continued their silent vigil, indifferent to the struggles of humans and aliens alike. Inside the station, however, tension hung thick in the recycled air. Every sound, the soft hiss of doors, the quiet footsteps of crew members, reminded everyone that danger was close, unseen, and unstoppable if underestimated. Commander Darian Holt walked beside Elira Veth toward the station's tactical room. The soft glow of the control panels reflected on their faces, casting long shadows. Every step felt deliberate. For the first time, Darian allowed himself to truly think about what could happen tomorrow. The Silicate Choir had already destroyed 2 colonies. Helios 9, lightly armed and barely reinforced, could not withstand a direct attack. But humans, he reminded himself, were never truly defeated by numbers alone. We need a plan, Darian said, his voice low but steady. Something bold. Something they won't expect. Illyra nodded. I've been reviewing their attack patterns. They move in perfect formations. Relentless but predictable in strategy. If we can predict their path and force them into a confined area, we could turn their numbers against them. So, Darian raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting a trap, high risk, high reward. Yes, she replied. But humans, you are risk-takers by nature. You thrive where others hesitate. I think it could work. They arrived at the tactical room. The large holographic display in the center of the room showed Helios 9 inches, the middle of the sector, surrounded by faint outlines of nearby celestial bodies. The system pulsed softly, reflecting the heartbeat of the station itself. Darian activated the projection. If the choir approaches from this vector, he said, tracing a glowing line with his finger, they will enter the sector in formation. We can lure them toward the gravitational anomaly here. He tapped a cluster of small points, representing asteroids. If we collapse the graviton net around the fleet, we can trap their flagship. It won't destroy all of them, but it'll break their formation and give us a chance to strike. Illyra's eyes widened slightly. It's risky. If the net fails, or if they detect it early, the station could be destroyed before we even begin. Darian shrugged, a faint grin tugging at his lips. When has anything worthwhile ever been safe? Illyra smiled, a small, genuine curve of her lips. True. Humans always surprise me. They spent the next hour going through the plan in meticulous detail. The crew gathered around the table, leaning over the holographic map. Humans and Xyrathi alike offered insights, corrections, and suggestions. Every possible scenario was debated, every contingency accounted for. Despite the seriousness, there was an energy in the room. It wasn't fear that drove them, it was determination. The kind of stubborn determination humans were famous for. They would fight. Not because victory was guaranteed, but because surrender was never an option. As the meeting ended, Darian leaned back in his chair. He looked around the room at the faces of his crew, humans and aliens alike, and felt a surge of pride. They were ready. Not perfect, not invincible, but ready. And sometimes, he knew, that was enough. Later, when the tactical room cleared, Darian returned to his quarters. Illyra was already there, sitting on the edge of his desk as before. The soft hum of the station filled the silence. You should rest, she said. Tomorrow will be long and hard. Darian shook his head. Sleep won't help me think tonight. I need to go over every possibility, every move they could make. Illyra tilted her head. And yet, you don't have to do it alone. He met her gaze and felt a strange calm settle over him. She had a way of reminding him that even in the darkest nights, there was strength in companionship. Then stay, he said softly. Stay until we face whatever comes. She nodded, settling in beside him. They didn't speak much. Words weren't necessary. Instead, they went over strategies, discussed possible maneuvers, and imagined what the enemy might do. And in those quiet hours, something else was built between them: trust, understanding, and an unspoken promise. Hours passed. The station's hum was punctuated by occasional alerts, minor system checks, routine status updates, but nothing threatening. Still, the tension never left the room. Both Darian and Illyra knew that tomorrow could be the end for many of them. But it was in this tension that humans thrived. It was their way of turning fear into action, into courage. You know, Illyra said quietly, breaking a long silence, I've studied many species in my lifetime. I've seen fear paralyze entire civilizations. But humans, you use it. You let it guide you, but not control you. I don't understand it, but I admire it. Darian smiled faintly. It's not always wise, he admitted. Sometimes it's reckless, but it works more often than it should. She laughed softly. It was a light, melodic sound that seemed to fill the room and, for a moment, chase away the darkness outside. Then tonight, we work with what works, humans and Zyrathi, side by side. Darian looked at her, feeling a surge of gratitude. Not many could see humans the way she did, not just as fighters, but as beings capable of hope, courage, and unyielding resolve. Side by side, he agreed. They continued their discussion until the station's artificial night cycle shifted toward the early hours of what would be the longest day of their lives. Finally, Elira leaned back, closing her eyes for a brief moment. Darian did the same, though he remained alert, ears tuned to every distant hum and footstep in the station. Sleep was unnecessary. Tonight was for preparation, for planning, and for building the quiet resolve that would carry them through the storm. When Darian finally stood and walked to the observation window, Elira followed. Together, they gazed out into the infinite darkness. "You ever wonder," he asked quietly, "why humans keep doing this, risking everything, facing impossible odds?" Elira considered it. "Perhaps because you know that giving up is never an option. That even in darkness, you can be the light." Darian chuckled softly. "I like that. Makes us sound heroic." "Heroic or stubborn," she replied. "Either way, you make a difference. And that's what matters." For a long moment, they stood in silence, sharing the quiet. The station hummed around them, the distant lights of distant planets twinkling faintly through the observation window. And for that small sliver of time, it felt as though the universe had paused, giving them a chance to prepare not just their plans, but their spirits. Darian knew the real test would come with the sunrise of battle, when the silicate choir arrived with its unyielding precision. But for tonight, he allowed himself a rare moment of hope, because humans, he reminded himself, were never truly alone, not when they chose to stand together. Elira turned to him, her eyes reflecting the pale starlight. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm glad we're facing it together." Darian nodded, a silent promise forming in his mind. "Me too." Outside, the stars continued their indifferent watch. Inside Helios 9, a quiet but powerful resolve had taken root. It was the human way, facing fear with courage, uncertainty with boldness, and darkness with companionship. And as the night deepened, Darian and Elira, human and Zyrathi, knew that whatever tomorrow brought, they would meet it together. And in that quiet determination, the first seeds of victory were already planted. The first light of Helios 9's artificial dawn swept across the station. Its glow revealed the faces of a crew already awake and moving with purpose. Commander Darian Holt stood at the center of the command deck, reviewing the final details of the plan one last time. Outside, the stars of the frontier sparkled like distant promises. But Darian knew better than to be fooled by beauty. The silicate choir was coming, and they would not be kind. Elira Veth approached him, her violet eyes steady and determined. "Are you ready, Commander?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but there was a flicker of concern beneath the surface. Darian nodded. "Ready as we'll ever be. We've trained, planned, and prepared. Now, it's about courage. Human courage and yours. Elira," she smiled faintly. "I'll follow your lead, always." Together, they walked through the station, inspecting defensive positions, ensuring that every human and alien crew member knew their role. The station was not a warship. It lacked heavy armaments and thick armor. Its greatest strength was its people and the unpredictability that only humans could bring to battle. In the tactical room, the final briefing began. The holographic display showed the Helios 9 sector, with its nearby gravitational anomaly and clusters of asteroids. The crew leaned forward, eyes fixed on the shimmering map. Darian took a deep breath. The choir will arrive in full formation, expecting an easy conquest. They won't anticipate a human trap. Our plan is simple in concept, but requires precise execution. We lure their flagship into the gravitational anomaly using the graviton net. Once trapped, we can collapse it to destabilize their formation and strike decisively. A junior officer, Lieutenant Cara Venn, raised her hand. Commander, if the net fails, the flagship could escape, and their fleet will have the advantage. How do we handle that? Darien met her gaze, unwavering. Then we adapt. Humans don't give up. We find another way. Another opening. That's what makes us dangerous, Elira added. And we will have communication coordination with allied species in the sector. The choir may be machines, but they are not infallible. We exploit every weakness, and we exploit it together. There were nods around the room. The crew absorbed the plan, understanding the risks, but also understanding the power of human resolve. Every person in that room knew that surrender was not an option. Hours later, the station's sensors detected movement in the distance. Small blips appeared on the display, growing steadily in size and intensity. The silicate choir had arrived. Darien's hands rested lightly on the command console. "This is it," he said, voice calm but firm. "All units. Begin the maneuver. Execute the plan." The station came alive with controlled chaos. Fighters launched from docking bays, weaving through the void with practiced precision. Sensors fed real-time data to the command deck, allowing Darien and Elira to adjust the trap as the choir fleet approached. Elira's fingers danced over her console, relaying instructions to allied species in nearby sectors. "Adjust your formations. Focus on their wings. Let us guide the flagship into the anomaly." The choir's ships were elegant in their efficiency, triangular, silver-hued vessels that moved as if they were a single organism. Their precision was terrifying, but it also revealed a flaw: predictability. Darien's eyes gleamed as he noticed it. "Exactly what we need," he murmured. The flagship, massive and imposing, led the fleet. It moved directly toward the gravitational anomaly, following the path the humans had subtly guided it into. The graviton net hummed as its field extended outward, invisible yet potent, like a web ready to trap the spider at its center. "Net is ready," Lieutenant Venn reported. "All channels aligned. Graviton field primed." Darien nodded. "Execute." Energy arcs danced across the void as the net activated. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, the flagship shuddered, caught in the invisible grip. The choir fleet hesitated, their formation wavering. Elira's voice cut through the command deck. "They're trapped. Now is our chance." The station's fighters surged forward, striking with calculated precision. Helios 9 itself wasn't heavily armed, but human ingenuity made up for it. The crew used maneuverable drones, energy pulses, and gravitational adjustments to force the choir ships into vulnerable positions. Darien watched the chaos from the command deck, heart steady. He was aware of the risk one misstep could destroy the station, but he also felt the thrill of human audacity. This was their advantage. The choir was powerful, relentless, but rigid. Humans were flexible. Humans improvised, and that would be the difference. The flagship struggled against the graviton net, attempting to free itself. Its movements were precise, but each effort drew it deeper into the anomaly. "They're falling right into it," Darien said, a faint smile playing at his lips. Suddenly, alarms blared. A wave of smaller choir drones broke off from the main fleet, moving toward the station with deadly intent. Darien's eyes narrowed. "Fighters, intercept! Protect the station at all costs." Elira coordinated defensive units, guiding them to intercept the drones before they could reach Helios 9. The air filled with tension as ships collided, energy beams flashing across the void. Yet, through it all, the human fighters adapted, adjusting trajectories and tactics in real time. Every move displayed the stubborn creativity that machines could not predict. Darien leaned over the console, issuing precise commands. "Now, adjust the net's collapse sequence. Compress slowly. Keep the flagship destabilized. But do not rupture the field prematurely." Elira's hands moved in perfect synchrony. "Field adjustment complete. Flagship is destabilized. Formation breaking apart." The choir flagship shook violently as its fleet scattered. Smaller ships collided or drifted into asteroid fields, while the remaining drones scrambled to regroup. The humans' gamble had paid off. Darien exhaled. It's working. The fleet is disorganized. Push forward. But victory came with a cost. One of the drones managed to breach the outer perimeter, firing a concentrated energy pulse directly at the station's docking bay. Elira reacted instantly, diverting shields and rerouting power. The pulse struck with a loud impact, shaking the station, but it did not destroy it. Darien's heart raced. Status report. Lieutenant Ven's voice was calm, despite the chaos. Minor structural damage. Contained. No casualties reported. Darien let out a slow breath, relief washing over him. Good. Continue the assault. Keep the pressure on. As the battle raged, Darien noticed the flagship attempting a final maneuver, a desperate effort to escape the anomaly. Elira, the flagship is trying to break free. Can we tighten the net? Elira's fingers flew across her console. Yes. Recalibrating. Now, the net pulsed, its invisible strands tightening around the flagship. It shuddered violently. Then finally, with a final burst of energy, collapsed inward. The flagship was immobilized, its systems overloaded, and then, silence. A cheer erupted on the command deck. But Darien held up his hand. Not yet, he said. The smaller ships were still a threat. Elira smiled faintly. But we've won the main battle. The flagship is destroyed. And their fleet is scattered. Humanity's gamble worked. Darien nodded, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. Humans had always relied on ingenuity, courage, and a refusal to accept defeat. And tonight, it had paid off. The remaining drones fled into the void, leaving Helios 9 battered but victorious. The station's crew, human and alien alike, celebrated quietly. Their relief tempered by the knowledge that the frontier was still dangerous. And the war was far from over. Darien turned to Elira, seeing the exhaustion and relief mirrored in her eyes. We did it, he said softly. Yes, she replied. Together, for a long moment, they simply stood, watching the stars once more. The void of space had not changed, indifferent as always. But humanity had made a mark tonight. Against impossible odds, they had stood, adapted, and triumphed. Darien felt a surge of pride not just for himself, but for every human who had risked everything. And he knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Humanity would continue to push boundaries, to fight, to survive, and to inspire. Because humans did not give up. Elira's hand brushed his shoulder, a quiet gesture of solidarity. Whatever comes next, Commander Holt, we will face it together. Darien smiled faintly, a mix of exhaustion and determination. Always, he said, and as the first true light of Helios 9's day bathed the station, humanity had won not just a battle, but a moment of undeniable proof. Courage, creativity, and unity could overcome even the deadliest of foes. The victory celebration on Helios 9 was brief. Though the Silicate Choir's flagship had been destroyed and their fleet scattered, Darien Holt knew better than to let relief cloud his judgment. In the vast emptiness of space, threats could return faster than one could imagine, and for humans, survival often meant acting before the enemy struck again. Darien walked through the corridors, watching his crew repair systems and redistribute resources. The station had taken damage, but nothing critical. Every human and alien worked in silent determination, their movements precise, their focus unwavering. Elira Veth appeared beside him, her violet eyes reflecting the soft light of the corridor. Commander, reports are coming in from the outer sectors. Some scattered drones have regrouped and are moving back toward the station. They may attempt another attack. Darien's jaw tightened. They won't give up that easily. Humans don't either. Let's make sure they regret it. In the tactical room, the crew prepared for the next wave. The holographic display showed multiple small clusters of choir drones converging toward Helios 9. Their movements were erratic now, a sign of disorganization, but still dangerous. Darien leaned over the console, issuing rapid commands. Fighters, Intercept the northern cluster. Shield units. Reinforce the perimeter. Every drone we destroy reduces their chance to regroup. Lieutenant Caravan nodded. All units ready, Commander. We'll intercept and hold them off. The first wave of drones appeared on the sensors. Swift, relentless, they surged toward the station. Human pilots maneuvered with unmatched precision, weaving through energy blasts and debris. Each move was calculated, yet flexible, something no machine could predict. Engage, Darien commanded. The battle began in earnest. Helios 9's fighters darted among the drones, striking from unexpected angles. Drones were destroyed in bursts of light, but for every one eliminated, another seemed to take its place. The station shook from near misses, but the human crew refused to falter. Elira coordinated the alien support teams, directing energy pulses and defensive barriers. Northern drones intercepted. Casualties minimal. Continue pushing forward. Darien scanned the sensors. Good, but keep an eye on the central cluster. The flagship's remnants may be attempting a counterattack. Suddenly, an alert flashed on the main display. A massive wave of drones had split from the main group, moving directly toward Helios 9's power core. The threat was immediate and deadly. Elira, Darien shouted, divert shields to the power core. All available fighters, intercept. Elira's fingers moved across the console with incredible speed. Diverting, shields at maximum, fighters moving into position. The drones collided with Helios 9's outer defenses. Energy arcs erupted, shaking the station violently. Alarms blared as crew members scrambled to repair minor damage. Despite the chaos, Darien remained calm. Humans had faced impossible odds before, and tonight would be no different. Hold the line, he shouted. Focus, adapt, and strike. Remember, we are human. We do not surrender. The cry seemed to inspire the crew. Fighters moved with precision. Shields redirected at critical points, and drones began to fall one by one. Yet the central cluster pressed on. Undeterred, Elira's voice was steady but urgent. Commander, if we cannot stop them, the power core will be compromised. That could destroy the station. Darien's mind raced. The station's survival depended on quick thinking. Humans thrived on creativity under pressure. He scanned the tactical display, then made a decision. Prepare the graviton diversion. We'll use the remaining drones as bait to draw the central cluster away from the core. Lieutenant Ven's eyes widened. That's risky. The diversion could backfire. Darien nodded. It's a risk we must take. Humans don't wait for safe choices, they create their own path. The diversion was set into motion. Fighters lured the central cluster into a narrow corridor near the asteroid field. Using precise timing, the graviton nets were activated, trapping the drones and preventing them from reaching the core. The tactic worked flawlessly. The drones collided with the field, scattered, and were neutralized one by one. Elira let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It worked. The core is safe. Darien allowed himself a faint smile. Humans and Xyrathi, together, nothing can stop us. But the battle was not over. A new threat emerged. The remnants of the flagship's command module. Though the main vessel was destroyed, its AI had survived, sending encrypted signals to the scattered drones. They were regrouping faster than anticipated, adapting to human tactics. Commander, Elira said, her voice tense. The AI is learning. We need to neutralize it before it regains control. Darien's mind raced. The AI had been ruthless, calculating every move humans made. But humans were unpredictable. Humans improvised. That was their advantage. Deploy the infiltration drones, Darien commanded. We'll send a team to board the module and shut it down from the inside. A small squad of elite fighters and engineers prepared for the mission. Among them, Darien chose a human and Xyrathi pair to lead. Elira insisted on joining, bringing her expertise and determination. Together, they would confront the AI directly. As the infiltration team boarded the shuttle, Darien watched the station's defenses hold the line. Every drone destroyed, every maneuver executed, was a testament to human ingenuity. Machines could calculate, predict, and attack, but they could not anticipate courage, quick thinking, or the stubborn creativity that defined humanity. The shuttle approached the command module, small against the towering remains of the flagship. Illyra's fingers danced over the controls, guiding the vessel with precision. The AI had anticipated their approach, activating defense drones and energy barriers. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Darien said, voice calm and commanding. "We've faced worse." The shuttle weaved through fire, using asteroids for cover, energy pulses narrowly missing them. Darien felt the familiar thrill of risk, the tension that only humans could turn into strength. Finally, they reached the command module. Illyra and the team deployed the boarding pods, attaching themselves to the AI's hull. Inside, the module was a maze of circuits and glowing panels, the AI's presence almost palpable. "Remember," Darien said, "the AI can adapt. Move quickly, disable systems, and trust your instincts. That is what makes us human." The team spread out, dismantling control nodes and overriding security protocols. The AI reacted, attempting to trap them in recursive loops and energy traps. But human creativity prevailed. Every obstacle was met with improvisation. Every calculated risk turned into a solution. Minutes felt like hours, but gradually, the AI's defenses weakened. The module's lights flickered, circuits overheated, and finally, the AI's core went silent. "We did it," Illyra whispered, relief washing over her. Darien nodded, pride swelling in his chest. Humans had faced impossible odds, adapted, and succeeded. Machines could be relentless, precise, and merciless. But they could not match human courage, flexibility, or determination. The shuttle returned to Helios 9, carrying the victorious team. The station had survived the night, battered but unbroken. Humans and Xyrathi alike gathered on the command deck, watching as the stars outside shone indifferently. Darien addressed the crew, voice calm but firm. "Tonight, we faced fear, chaos, and impossible odds, and we did not falter. Humanity has survived because we refuse to surrender, because we adapt, because we fight together. Remember this night, and know that we can face whatever comes next." Illyra stood beside him, her hand brushing his shoulder in silent solidarity. "You inspire not just your people, Commander, but all who fight alongside you. Humans are remarkable. You always find a way," Darien smiled faintly. "And we always will, together." For the first time since the warnings had arrived, Helios 9 felt truly safe. The crew had proven themselves, not just to the AI or the choir, but to the universe. Humans had survived once more, not by sheer power, but by courage, ingenuity, and unity. Outside, the stars continued to shine, distant and indifferent. Inside, humanity had left its mark. They had faced the choir, adapted to their tactics, and emerged victorious. And as the crew of Helios 9 repaired, recovered, and prepared for the unknown future, Darien knew this was only the beginning. Humanity would continue to push, to fight, to survive. They would not surrender. They would not falter. And in the darkest nights of space, they would shine brighter than any star. The aftermath of the battle left Helios 9 battered but alive. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and corridors still smelled faintly of burned circuits. Yet despite the chaos, the station thrummed with life. Humans and Xyrathi moved among the wreckage with quiet determination, repairing, restoring, and preparing for whatever the universe might throw at them next. Commander Darien Holt walked through the station, surveying the results. Fighters were docked and refueled. Systems were patched, though some minor damage would take days to fully repair. Yet what struck him most wasn't the physical state of Helios 9, it was the spirit of the crew. They were exhausted, yes, but they were unbroken. Every human and Xyrathi he passed carried the same glint in their eyes. Pride, resilience, and an unshakable determination to survive. Elira Veth joined him in the command deck. Her violet eyes reflected the soft glow of repaired displays. "The station is holding," she said quietly. "You did well, Commander. The humans, your people, they are remarkable." Darian shook his head slightly, a humble smile forming. "Not just humans. All of us. This victory was a team effort. Without every person here, we wouldn't have survived the night." Elira leaned on the edge of the console beside him, her gaze thoughtful. "It's more than survival. You inspire hope, Commander. Even when the odds are impossible, humans refuse to give up. You adapt, you endure, and somehow, you win. That is what makes your species extraordinary." Darian's smile widened faintly. "We do what we must. Sometimes it's reckless. Sometimes it's stubborn. But it works." Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, indifferent to the battles fought below. Yet inside Helios 9, a small but powerful victory had been won. They had faced the Silicate Choir, a relentless machine enemy, and emerged triumphant not because of superior numbers or firepower, but because of courage, strategy, and the human refusal to surrender. The station's communication system buzzed. Darian activated it, and the faces of allied species filled the hollow screen. "Commander Holt," one of the fleet leaders said, "we received reports of the choir retreating. Their forces are scattered." Helios 9 held the line. "Your people have done the impossible." Darian nodded. "We did what we had to do. Humans fight not just to survive, but to protect. That is the truth of our species." Elira placed a hand on his shoulder. "And that truth is inspiring. You reminded everyone tonight that courage, creativity, and unity can overcome even the deadliest of foes." Darian allowed himself a long breath. Relief, fatigue, and pride mingled together. But even in victory, he knew that the frontier was vast, full of unknown dangers. Humanity had won this battle, yes, but the war for survival in deep space was ongoing, and humans would face it as they always did, with boldness, ingenuity, and unyielding resolve. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, Darian and Elira found themselves alone. The station outside was still alive, with faint hums of machinery and distant footsteps. But for a moment, the chaos of battle faded. Elira sat on the edge of his desk, as she had on the first night. Darian leaned against the wall, exhaustion evident in his posture. Yet there was a peace now, a rare calm that followed the storm. "You know," Darian said quietly, "tonight could have ended very differently." Elira nodded, her gaze steady. "I know. But it didn't. We survived. Together." Darian allowed himself a small, honest smile. "I never doubted that humans could face the impossible. But tonight, I realized something else. It's not just about survival. It's about connection, trust, and having someone by your side, someone who refuses to let you face the night alone." Elira's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then we faced it together, and that made all the difference." The two sat in silence, watching the soft glow of the station lights and the distant stars beyond. Outside, the universe remained vast and indifferent. Inside, humanity had proven itself once more, not just through strength or courage, but through unity and determination. Hours passed, and the station grew quiet. The crew rested in makeshift bunks or continued their repairs. But Darian and Elira remained in the command deck. Words were unnecessary now. The battle had taught them more than strategy or tactics. It had reminded them of the value of trust, companionship, and resolve. Finally, Darian spoke again. "Whatever comes next, we will face it as humans always do. With courage, with stubbornness, and with each other." Elira nodded. "And I will be by your side." As we faced the choir, so we will face the unknown. The hours of the night faded into Helios 9's artificial morning. The station, though battered, was alive. Humans and Xyrathi alike moved with purpose, repairing, recalibrating, and preparing for future threats. And though the frontier remained a place of uncertainty, one thing was certain. Humans would never give up. They would adapt, improvise, and fight with a determination that no machine, no enemy, could match. Darian stepped to the observation window once more. He gazed out at the stars, thinking of the colonies lost, the battles fought, and the victories won. Humanity's presence on the frontier was small, fragile even, but it was brilliant, a spark of life and defiance in the endless void. Elira came to stand beside him. "You realize," she said quietly, "that humans inspire more than hope. You inspire courage in every species you encounter. You remind us that even in darkness, light is possible." Darian looked at her, gratitude and respect in his eyes. "And you remind me that courage is stronger when it is shared. No one survives alone. Not truly." The two remained there, side by side, as Helios 9 hummed with quiet determination. Outside, the stars glimmered in the eternal darkness of space. Inside, humanity had survived, and they had done it together. Darian's thoughts wandered briefly to the battles yet to come. The frontier was vast, full of unknown dangers. But the human spirit had been tested tonight, and proven unbreakable. Every system, every star, every challenge could be faced with courage, intelligence, and unity. Humans were stubborn, yes, but it was a stubbornness that had saved countless lives, including their own. Elira's voice broke the silence. "Tomorrow, we rebuild, we repair, and we prepare. But tonight, we remember that we are not alone." Darian nodded, a faint smile forming. Not alone, never alone. They turned their eyes back to the stars, silent witnesses to their triumph. Humanity had faced fear, chaos, and overwhelming odds, and had not faltered. They had shown the universe that courage, adaptability, and companionship were weapons more powerful than any fleet. And as Helios 9 drifted in the infinite darkness, battered but undefeated, one truth remained clear. Humans would continue to shine, no matter how vast the void. They would fight, they would survive, they would endure, and they would never face the night alone. In that moment, Commander Darian Holt and Elira Veth knew that victory was not measured only in battles won, but in lives saved, in courage tested, and in the bonds forged in the cold reaches of space. Humanity had triumphed, not because it was unstoppable, but because it refused to surrender. The frontier stretched endlessly ahead, full of unknown challenges and dangers. Yet Helios 9, with its crew of humans and Xyrathi, had proven that even against impossible odds, life could endure, thrive, and inspire. And for every human, every crew member, and every ally watching the stars, one thing was certain. When faced with the night, they would always find a way to shine.